So today's activity is a little game that is meant to model the water cycle for you. And I know what you're saying, that you've had the water cycle in class before and you've learned about it for many years. But for most of you, the water cycle, as it was presented in elementary school, looks something like this, where you had a collection of water and it evaporates because of the sunlight. Then it gets cold and condenses in a cloud, comes down as precipitation, and the whole process starts over again. That is a very circular type of cycle. And that's a good, simple explanation of the water cycle, but in reality, it's a lot more complicated than that. This is a much better map of where water can travel in the water cycle. And if you look at all these places, like the oceans, clouds, lakes, rivers, these are all places that you know where water is. If you think about it, you know that water's in animals, water's in plants, it's in the ground, it's in the soil, it's in glaciers. So what we're going to try to do with this activity today is model the path by which water travels through this water cycle. Like, where does it go and how often does it go between these different places? Because these are all places where water is in the water cycle. And you can see it's a lot more complicated than just a simple circle of evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. What you're going to start off with is this instruction sheet. And this is going to tell you how to play the game. What you need to do is pick any location on the map as your starting point. Doesn't matter what location you start at. You don't need to make any marks at this time. What you'll do is you'll take a die and you'll roll the dice and see what it comes up as. Now, I'll pick a location to start. I'll say I'm going to start here in rivers. And I roll the number 1. Well, I have to go to my instruction sheet and find rivers. If the die rolls these numbers, this is where I go. So I was at river and it rolled a 1 or a 2. I am going to go to ocean. On my sheet, I'm going to draw a line from rivers going to oceans, because that's what it told me is a path by which water can move. Water's in a river and it can go to the ocean. Well, now I'm at the ocean and I need to figure out where water can go from the ocean. I'm going to take my die and I'm going to roll it again and I get a 4. Well, now I need to go to oceans. If the die rolls a 4, I stay. Now, how we're going to depict that on our map here is if you roll a stay, you're going to draw a check mark. And that indicates that that was a time in which water stayed in place. Now, I'm still in the ocean, so I'm going to take this dice. I'm going to roll it again. I'm in the ocean. 1, 2, 3, 4. I still stay. So I'm going to actually draw a second check saying that I stayed in place. Now, you're going to do this all class period, or most of the class period, and you're going to have lines going all over this sheet. For example, I'll do another one. I'll pick a spot. Let's say animal. Roll the dice, and I get a 2. If I'm at the animal position and I roll a 2, I go to lake. So I'm at animal. I roll the 2. I'm going to draw a line to lake. Now, you're going to be all over this page, and there's going to be some places you're going to go back and forth between. If I was at a future roll back at animal and I roll pond or lake again, I don't need to draw a second line. What you'll do is make a mark on it. That would denote that, hey, I've already gone from pond to lake, but I went a second time. If you roll it again, you make another line. So some of these arrows are going to have a lot of repeat answers, or a lot of repeat movement. You don't need to draw an arrow for every time you move that way. Just put a little tick mark, like you're counting how many times you went that direction. Okay. So you can see you have to use the game instructions board, if you're in soil and you roll a 3, you would stay. But if you roll a 6, you would go to river. So you could be at soil, and if you rolled a 6, you would go to river. Make sure you draw these as arrows, that you started here and you went that direction. If you roll a stay at any location, you're going to put a check mark for every time you would roll a stay. Some of these places are going to have a lot of check marks because it's someplace where water stays a long time. There are other times where some of these places, they won't have any check marks at all. Stay is not an option. And that's what we're trying to determine here, is where and how frequently does water move between all of these places that are all a part of the water cycle. Now the question becomes, how long do you do this? Well, you need to do this most of the class period in order to complete the chart. I will let you know when you are finished or we have enough data in order to be able to stop the game and then make our conclusions. And at that point, I will give you a set of conclusions questions that we will answer together. If you have any questions at any time during this activity, please ask.